measured. It is measured as how it is referenced in legislation. What is important is that there were continuous measurements from April 5th to the 16th of 2007, and wind speed and structural vibrations were taken into account. So these are the results analyzed by myself of the data that was provided to me by the firm that measured the noise. As you can see, and this is an important factor, if you're going to compare in-home low-frequency noise, and if it's due, or theoretically due to wind turbines, you got to compare it when the wind speed is the same. You cannot compare noise in a wind turbine house on different days and have a different wind speed. That's just not scientifically valid. So point out here that the wind speed in all of these measurements was the same, and of course, as you can see, the red bars indicate the residual noise, which is the noise that exists in the home when the wind turbines are not in rotation. And then we have the gray and black bars that indicate the nighttime and daytime environmental noise with the wind turbines rotating. So this was the data that we had. And now we come to a problem, which is very frequent in low-frequency noise. What do we compare this with? There's no norms. There's no dose responses, so what am I going to compare this with? Oh, this is very interesting, but now how do I know what is bad and what is good? So as I said, our group has been studying this for over 30 years, and in 2004 we had a vibroacoustic disease case, or a low-frequency noise-induced pathology case that had to do not with wind turbines, but with the grain terminal. And in this case, no, sorry, hello? So this is the house where the complaints were coming from, and in this house it was an architect who lived there with his wife and his 10-year-old at the time son. At the time we measured the noise in the grain terminal house, and as you can see, this is the white bars, and compared them to the noise measured in the wind turbine house. This would give us some idea of what we're looking at. Why? Because in the grain terminal house, we found acoustic conditions that led to the development of vibroacoustic disease, clinical signs and symptoms. So we thought, well, if we compare it with the grain terminal house, it might be a good idea to see if it's very much higher or relatively low. And what we found, of course, was that the wind turbine house had much higher levels than the grain terminal house. So indeed, as far as we're concerned, and again, I insist upon this fact, given our 30 years of research in the area, we thought there's probably conditions for vibroacoustic disease to develop in this home. How did this all occur? In November of 2006, this family permitted the installation of these wind turbines. Of course, nothing was mentioned about the noise before their installation. Over the course of a few months, they discovered that they were having an inability to sleep, and they had an increased irritability. There was some strange behaviors with dogs, horses, and ants. I will be focusing on horses in my presentation. The drop of water came when in March of 2007 the parents received a letter from the teacher of their son, 12-year-old son, who said, what is going on with this, what used to be an A student? The child is tired, the child cannot concentrate, the child is doing very poorly at work. Of course, the parents needed nothing more. They knew what was going on because they too were suffering with the effects, and this is when our team was contacted. Because we have 30 years experience in this area, we did not give this family a questionnaire. Instead, what we did is we gave them specific, objective medical diagnostic tests. These include an echocardiogram, a P300, and a PCO2 respiratory drive test. Quickly, and just to have this contained in this presentation, vibroacoustic disease as defined for an occupational exposure, which is not in-home, but an occupational exposure. These are the evolutions of the clinical signs and symptoms. How we got here would take a whole nother presentation of 20 minutes, so I'm just going to continue right along, and maybe we can, if anybody has questions, of course you can talk to me later. So we did the P300 event-related potentials in the child. This is a test that measures the time it takes for your brain to respond to a certain stimulus. And what we found is that the time it took for this child to respond to a certain stimulus was much higher than would be expected. The expected time is 300 milliseconds, and the child was taking 352 milliseconds to respond to a stimulus. So, of course, this was in June 2007. In September, after 2 months of holidays, this value returned to normal. Another significant indication of low-frequency noise-induced pathology, again having to do with the brain, was seen in this family with the respiratory tests. This has to do, or it reflects the neurological capability of your brain to control your breathing. And what we have seen over the past 30 years in our research is that people affected by low-frequency noise lose the capability of hyperventilating in the presence of excessive CO2. This is a response that is coordinated by the brainstem, the neurological breathing centers of your brainstem, and in low-frequency noise-exposed people, this response starts to deteriorate significantly. And of course, echocardiography also showed some changes. So, in 2007, legal proceedings were begun by the family, and initially the court ordered that the number 2, here's the home, the number 2 wind turbine had to be removed because it was way too close to the home. It also ordered that the remaining 3 wind turbines must be turned off during the evening and night hours as stipulated by EU legislation of evening and night hours. The court case referred to these 4, and initially this was the 4th one, wind turbines, and as the court case continued, more turbines were put on in the general vicinity of this farm. So in 2010, we had an interesting situation going on with the horses. Besides what was happening to the family, where the parents or the mother and the children actually had to move out. The father had to remain there because this is a farm where he is breeding thoroughbred Lusitano horses. And what he found was many of his horses, in fact almost all of them, since the windmills were put up, or wind turbines were put up, he found that horses were developing boxy foot or club foot. We studied, I'll show you pictures of what this means. We studied 4 of these horses plus a control. So boxy foot or club foot is a condition, officially the name is Equine Flexural limb deformities, and basically there is a problem with one of the tendons and it doesn't extend as it should, and so the horse has this thing of that it looks like it's tiptoeing. This is the normal way. There should be at least 115 degrees from this plane down to the ground. And what you see here is there is not this 115 degrees. These are actual x-rays from this horse, Spartaco, which is case 4. We had a total of 5 cases, 4 exposed and 1 control. And this is actually Spartaco's hoofs. So there is a corrective surgery that is done for this flexural deformity, and it involves severing the accessory or check ligament. So as you can see, surgery was done on exactly 5 horses. In 2 of them, which were exposed to low frequency noise, born and raised in the farm, or just raised at the farm. Not all these horses that developed this were all born on this farm. One was acquired at the age of 15 days and brought to the farm and also developed this abnormality. So when the surgery was performed, fragments from each of the 5 cases were taken and studied in accordance to what we have learned over the past 30 years in our studies of low-frequency noise-induced problems. And what we found in the horses was, and this is perhaps going to seem like a mouthful, we found blood vessel walls that were very thickened because of the production of collagen. We found this in the horses. We found this before in the rats exposed to low-frequency noise. And we found this before in the humans exposed to low-frequency noise. This is not something you find every time you catch a cold. Every time you get an AIDS virus, this doesn't appear. If you get cancer, this doesn't appear. The production of collagen in the absence of an inflammatory process that we found in the horses recently and over the past 30 years in animal and human models just is not something that appears every day in clinical medicine. So, it is not only the walls of the vessels that are thickening, the same sort of unusual and very strange thickening is also found in the lung structures of the animals exposed to low frequency noise, the rats, and it is also found in the hearts of human patients exposed to low frequency noise. So this is of course based on 30 years of data, and I could extend for another 3 hours on this, which I won't. So today, the Supreme Court, after many years of legal proceedings, in our case of wind turbines, the Supreme Court in Portugal decided that all 4 wind turbines must come down. One had already come down, but the other 3 are coming down. It also decided that the monetary retribution owed to the family should be more than the lower court had previously decided. In addition to all of this work, a master's thesis was accomplished with the work with the horses and the flexural deformities. In 2012, Teresa, our veterinarian, got her master's degree based on this work. So, that's it. Thank you.